I'm Michelle, and we're going to talk about how I and you can use mindfulness, compassion, and connection to find your inner calm and a little more sanity in your parenting. What self-compassion actually is and what it isn't. Welcome to Compassionate Heart Parenting. I'm your host, Michelle. If you've ever found yourself snapping at your kids, caught in a yelling pattern you hate, and then drowning in shame afterward, I want you to take a deep breath. You are in the right place. I know that cycle because I lived it. I am an emotionally focused therapist and a veteran of hand in hand parenting for over a decade. But more importantly, I'm a mom who knows what it feels like to be burnt out and on edge. And each week, we're moving away from overwhelmed and toward calm and connected. We're using the science of mindfulness and self compassion to find your inner calm and a little more sanity in your parenting. Today, we're diving into what self compassion actually is and what it isn't. So let's get started. When I first started talking to parents about self compassion, the reaction I got was some version of, but I don't want to let myself off the hook. And I completely understand that response. The word self compassion sounds soft. It sounds like lowering the bar. It sounds like, oh, what I was doing is fine. And it wasn't fine, right? So today I want to spend some real time on this because I think the misunderstanding of what self compassion actually is might be the single biggest barrier for many parents. What I am going to share with you is backed by 15 years of clinical work and by the research in this area. And I think by the end of this episode, the word self compassion is going to mean something quite different than it does right now. So, self compassion is not softness, but courage, not avoidance, but radical honesty. In order to make changes within ourselves to break patterns that no longer serve us and continue to grow as people and parents, we have to look inward. But if every time we look inward, we meet ourselves with criticism and blames and shoulds, we won't be able to look inward. We won't be able to learn or grow. And instead, we are likely to just shut down, to find ways to cope with the difficult emotions, and the negative patterns will continue. And worse than that, we sometimes feel worse about ourselves, which causes more stress and makes whatever those behaviors or patterns were that much more difficult to change. I talk about this a lot in my last episode, the cycle no one talks about and why you are not broken. So go check it out. When I started interrupting my own pattern of yelling, I felt worse, not better. Sorry, that's bad news, isn't it? It gets better. When I paused and removed myself, became flooded with a lot of difficult emotions, and this is a really common experience that parents describe. If I hadn't had the support that I had and began practicing self-compassion in those moments, I don't think I would have made it through. So let's look at the aspects of self-compassion practice, and then you can decide if you think it's weak, if it feels like making excuses or lowering your standards. So we're going to use the RAIN practice because it's one of my favorite self-compassion practices, and it feels like therapy session in a pocket, in my pocket, and it can be a therapy session in your pocket now too. You can use it anytime, anywhere. So RAIN stands for recognize, allow, interconnected, and need. So let's break this down. Recognize. First, you are naming your emotions, recognizing your emotions. That's what recognize is. And this shifts your focus from your child, whatever they're doing or not doing, and all of the anger and frustration towards them. And it helps you start to take accountability for yourself, your own emotions, and your own actions. And you're giving yourself some space and distance from the difficult emotions. So imagine that normally how it goes is you're floating along in the ocean and a big storm comes up and you just bear down and you do what you have to do to get through. So, naming your emotions is giving you internal emotional distance. So now you're floating above the storm and you're watching it like a movie, and you can see what's happening with more clarity, and you are not as swept away by those big emotions. Allow. So normally we either push our emotions away, push them down, shove them as far back in the closet as we can, or we judge ourselves internally for our emotions. Like, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? I shouldn't get so upset. I should be able to handle this better. So we kind of do a mix of that. There's probably other things that we do too, but these are the most common things that people do. And allow can sound like, I love Jeff Warren. He's a meditation teacher. He says, "Welcome to the party." So you can say to yourself, "Welcome to the party, anger. Welcome to the party, frustration. Welcome to the party, fear. Welcome to the party. Welcome to the party. Welcome to the party." And you're actively doing something different than pushing the emotions away or judging them. You may still feel the judgment, and you can even notice that. That's okay. Still, it's not like you can turn it off like a light switch. You're just noticing it and you're practicing doing something different. The I is interconnected. This comes from Kristen Neff's work around common humanity. You are intentionally reminding yourself that you are not alone. This is the antidote to shame, because shame says that what's wrong with you, why you're bad, and shame like makes you want to hide under the covers, and like you don't want anybody to know that this ever happened, and you don't want anybody to see you, and you don't want anybody to know because you feel like it's so awful, I'll be pushed aside. And we don't generally have all those thoughts, but you might notice the feeling of like, I don't want to tell anybody about this. I don't want anybody to know. That's a good indication that it might be shame, right? So when we intentionally remind ourselves this is a normal response, many parents would be angry. You're probably angry because your child means so much to you. This is an antidote to that shame pattern that can be there. So that's interconnected. The N is need. What do you need in this moment? I'm going to give you one of my favorite ways to respond with the in the need. Imagine someone or several people that you trust. This can be someone that's deceased. It can be someone that you've even never met. Like I've used Pema Chodron, I've used Kristen Neff, and all these people that you are like, you know what? I really feel like, based on everything I know about them, that if they were here with me right now, they wouldn't judge me. They wouldn't like tell me I'm terrible, and they wouldn't, just like say I'm awful, that they would actually be there with you. It could also be a pet. And you're going to imagine them there with you. So, this person, people, pets, and you are going to, imagine yourself in your mind's eye. You're kind of like upset, sad. It could be where you are in real life. It could be like maybe you picture yourself in a different setting, like on a bench in a park or something. And then imagine that whomever is with you, they see the good in you. They know that you are just having a hard day or a difficult moment. They don't think anything less of you. They're not judging you. They know that you're an awesome parent, that you love your kids so deeply, Maybe they don't say anything. You can just feel that from their presence. Maybe they put their arm around you. Maybe they put their hand on your shoulder. Maybe if it's a pet, they put their head in your lap. And this is a imaginal exposure exercise of giving ourselves what we need in those moments, which is oftentimes a reminder that we're not alone, that we're not terrible, right? Because the situation and the thoughts tell us we're alone, we're the only ones, and we're terrible and bad. And it just kind of goes into this vicious spiral. So, this is an active way of reminding yourself what is true, that you're not a bad parent, that you're not awful, that you shouldn't be excommunicated, that the people who know you and love you know that you care and that you're trying so hard. And you can imagine them being there with you in those moments of need. And you can draw upon this image anytime you need support, anytime you need that love and to be cared for in difficult moments. And so, walking through this self compassion practice, let me ask you, does it sound like an excuse? Does it sound like lowering your standards, not caring enough about your actions? Or does it sound like taking responsibility? Does it sound like tuning in, learning more about yourself, and breaking patterns? The research on self compassion shows that it actually increases motivation and accountability rather than reducing it because it removes shame that keeps us frozen. A closing reflection question. What would you say to a close friend who described the parenting moment that you're most ashamed of? So they came to you, they sat down, and they told you everything. What would you say to them? Would you say, like, oh, you are a terrible parent? Or would you say, oh my gosh, you were having a hard day. Like, you're such an awesome mom or dad. I see how hard you try. What would you say to your friend if they described your parenting moment that you're most ashamed of? And can you offer yourself one sentence of that same response? I see you. I see how hard you're trying. You're doing great. It's okay to have bad days. It's okay to mess up. It's okay. The light in me sees the light in you. Be well. Hey, if you are enjoying this show, please rate it and review it. This will help me keep the show going so that more parents can feel less alone and find self compassion in their parenting. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear how this landed for you, if you've gotten to use the RAIN practice in real life, and if you have an idea for a future episode. A reminder, this content is intended for educational purposes only and should not be used as a replacement for private psychotherapy services. Compassionate Heart Parenting does not provide psychotherapy services in any capacity. I am a therapist, but I'm not your therapist, and this is not therapy and should not be a substitute for mental health treatment. If you need mental health treatment, please find a qualified professional in your area.